But just are concerned for the housing mix. This is the primary focus of my conversation today, of my talk. But I also want to make a few remarks on some new information on the apartments later on. Residents, I believe, have been misled on this housing mix. The initial April 2025 transportation impact assessment roughly showed about 30% low-density family units. We requested an update to this report to show the impact of the average daily traffic to our streets. We received a rehash recently of the report with some brief comments, but no hard answers to our average daily traffic questions impacting the residents. Wheeler Ave as an example. We want to know how many cars are coming down our street every day. And while the traffic firm did validate our 6,000 cars per day model generated from the site in October to council, their updated December 2025 report also revealed a drastic shift. Single-family homes were cut from 311 units to 147 units, with the difference loaded on 561 low to medium density houses. That means Acorn now has only 15% low density family housing and 85% higher density. This includes the 589 high density apartments up to 6 stories, which are the subject to the rezoning request in front of council today. Folks, this density mix is a complete inversion to where we should be. This density drift is a lack of transparency, and we think it's eroded trust in the process because of the shift from 311 we had last report to the 147. The single family homes only represent about 10%, 11% of the total mix. We do not support this because it is upside down relative to Dorchester's established character and council's own expert guidance. Our town thrives on quiet, family-focused neighborhoods, low-density homes that build community bonds. Comparable recent investments prove this out. Boardwalk is 580 homes with about 85% low density. This contrasts with Acorn having single-family homes drop to a mere, I said 10% is 15% of the mix. This isn't smart growth, it's radical precedent change that risks turning Dorchester into something unrecognizable. Worse, it contradicts the Watson and Associates report should be on the screen, but it's not. That was commissioned by council in 2022. Watson's, for everyone's knowledge, is a very high reputable consultant to municipalities, over 250 municipalities across Canada. So Watson recommended in the report 65% low density, 35% medium density to match local needs. And even if council refuses the 589 apartment high density block right now, the remaining stick mix is still inverted from the Watson 65-35 recommendation. Without the apartment units, we're left with 193 low density units. That includes 147 singles, 46 semis, and up to 561 low medium units. This results in a shift from 15% low density to 25% low density of the remaining 754 total units. So instead of the 65-35 split that we have with mix, we have 25-75%, still completely upside down. So clearly, even removing the apartments doesn't restore the intended low density mix priority recommendations from your own consultant. The provincial policy doesn't state a housing mix, but it does give latitude for communities such as ours to tailor local mix to local conditions. The current plan at 15% low density, 85 high density is a forced fit that ignores expert guidance that council itself sought. And this raises key questions. How has the municipality rationalized the current housing mix? What is the basis for accepting such a stark contrast from the consultant's recommendation in 2022? Has council re-engaged the consultants to explore what other communities our size are doing in determining an appropriate density mix without completely inverting from the previous guidelines? It simply doesn't make sense in an area like this with no amenities to support it. To put this in context, other Ontario towns like Lucan target similar mixes around 65 to 70% low density in new developments to preserve rural character while allowing some medium to high density for affordability. Why are we deviating from this so far in Dorchester? The Watson recommendation urges revising, not eliminating the core location criteria as well for higher density, and specifically on the hectares, not the other core criteria that council is looking to change in the latest operating plan, which is being challenged by SIFT and, by the way, the Land Tribunal. I have a question for the mayor and the council. Which specific areas or policies of the draft official plan update are currently being challenged at the Ontario Land Tribunal?
In answer to your question, Mark, I think it's the official plan amendment 27 that that they are appealing. And we're having a few challenges trying to find out exactly what that appeal is all about anyway. I don't think I can say very much more about that right now, but accepting the fact that there is appeal in place.
Okay. Well, the current draft operational plan that's up for in the land tribunal right now has a removal of the current locational criteria, as I mentioned, or softening of the criteria in the November presentation. That being direct access to arterial roads, adjacency to material commercial, and adjacency to major parks to ensure walkability and lower car dependency. In any event that the apartment block meets only the hectares threshold, it's isolated and it has no grocery stores, et cetera. They'll have some commercial, I understand, but it's not enough to foray a trip to Foodland or Shoppers, et cetera, et cetera. In addition to this, the proposed special policy area notwithstanding clause that the applicant has as part of the rezoning is a workaround to bypass these sensible rules, stretching a designation that was originally meant for infill townhouses. According to MPP and Housing Minister Rob Flack, if we're going to do it, we have to do it smartly and effectively, taking into consideration infrastructure needs and also density and traffic. To this, I would add new developments must be fully compliant and not rely on compliance loopholes. They need to respect the rules that previous applicants had to abide by. When developers circumvent the established community policies in this way, it undermines trust in the process and erodes the character we've worked so hard to preserve. Finally, we emphatically do not want this traffic funneling through Wheeler Avenue. As I've said, our family street isn't equipped for 2,000 extra cars a day, and the infrastructure just can't take it. We propose some practical mitigations, some of which have been actioned or responded to, but there's no mention. There was a mention of a road, but that's in some vague future phase. With schools and amenities already stretched, adding 3,000 people today, which is 70% of Dorchester's current population, amplifies the pressure without proportional infrastructure support. I would like to ask each councillor through the mayor a simple question. Would you want 2,000 new cars coming down your street every day? Yes or no?
Just a reminder, this isn't a question and answer of council. You get to state your opinions.
Okay, fine. Council, we're not opposed to growth. We're opposed to growth that disregards our community and smart growth considering traffic and density. We ask council to hold the developer to that standard, to reject the high-density apartments, to restore a balanced mix closer to Watson's 65-35% guidance, and to eliminate Wheeler impacts with enforceable mitigations now. We urge you to show the courage and the resolve to make the right decision for Dorchester, even if that decision leads us to the Ontario Land Tribunal. The community requires leaders who stand firm on principle when the stakes are high. We should not be afraid to fight what we believe in. If we go a land tribunal direction, precedents show isolated, high-density proposals without walkability to material amenities often fail. We've consulted legal counsel and are prepared to defend our community's fabric. In summary, this decision, regardless of whether or not you're seeking re-election this fall, will form part of your legacy to Dorchester, the mark you leave on a community we've all invested in. We trust council will weigh these concerns impartially, ensuring decisions prioritize the public interest and community fabric above any personal, private, or market benefits from increased development activity. Thank you for your time and consideration. And for full disclosure, before I step down, there's a strong turnout here tonight. So our group will be circulating a focused petition on the density mix issue alone. If you agree that you want a cap of 35% on higher density consistent with Watson's recommendations, please sign it. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mr. Lunick. Is there someone else who's
The
registered?
next speaker would be Laura LaFave.
Oh, okay, thank you. And Laura, do you want to just state your name again and your address for the record?
Thank you, Mayor McMillan. Council, municipal staff, Doug Terry, representatives. My name is Laura LaFave, and I live at 165 Mill Road, at the corner of Mill Road and Christie Drive. I still have concerns on which of the two alignments will be chosen for sewer construction to service Acorn Valley. If there's a photo available to show, I have a private well. I have a geothermal water furnace. And in this picture, you can see that my foundation, our private well for drinking water, our underground loops for our geothermal water furnace for heating and cooling lie 30 feet from alignment 1 along Christie Drive. Dewatering for deep sewer construction will have impacts. In the new information that was presented in the hydrogeology report, December 2025, Englobe warns of the dewatering impacts from deep sewer construction and also asks that data be collected from private wells on water quantity and quality prior to dewatering. It is estimated in the new report that 600,000 to 2 million liters of groundwater per day will be removed during dewatering process. Stantec, in their recommendations, state that the pumping rate and the radius of influence must be confirmed before dewatering begins. Englobe also speaks to soil sediment. If we can have a second picture available, please. Soil sediment will occur from dewatering and sewer construction. As you can see here, that has already began on the extension of the sewers from Pump Station 3 to Mill Road. Stantec has concerns on the effect this will have on the stress being placed on nearby existing structures. Doug Terry acknowledged in their answers that number one, Englobe will be retained for to review the dewatering plan. Number two, the dewatering contractor must have a plan in place to maintain adequate water supply to residences with wells. Number three, residents must be informed of dewatering start dates and end dates prior to dewatering occurring. Residents within the radius of influence of sewer construction will be offered an interior and exterior home review before dewatering begins. And number five, potential impact to well owners could be significantly reduced by avoiding alignment 1. Globe recognizes the impact of dewatering on private wells and structures. Doug Terry acknowledges these in their answers. Why will alignment 1 still be considered for sewer construction? In the January 2026 Functional Service Report, CJDL noted that alignment 2, which crosses through future boardwalk development and west of Mill Road, will mitigate impact on private well owners. It will also avoid full road construction, the cost involved with that, and the traffic disruption that will occur. Vroom and Associates, in their December 2025 environmental impact report, wrote a dedicated letter to address the environmental concerns of crossing the Rath-Harris Drain and cites mitigation measures to minimize those adverse impacts. I sincerely hope Doug Terry Limited continues discussions with the municipality, boardwalk development, Upper Thames River Conservation Authority, and local residents to make alignment 2 the preferred route for sewer construction for Acorn Valley. The final decision lies with the municipality. Please choose alignment 2 for sewer construction to Acorn Valley. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura.
The sign-up sheet just says WM Covermaker, I believe.
Covermaker.
Covermaker. Do you want to speak? Laura spoke for you. Okay. So, Ken MP, are you wishing to speak?
The chair, and to everyone here, can you hear me okay? My main concern is where the actual road's coming out onto Harris Road. To me, that's wetland area. I know that because from my experience of being with Weavercroft, who sold the land, actually it was Gord Weaver. So for 10 years, I was part of Weavercroft International. That area has lots of times there's been water over the road when you have a quick thaw in the spring of the year. And so it was flooded and it was not accessible. Now that doesn't happen all the time. The other thing is cutting down all those trees, moving those power lines. I realize it is a road allowance, but I realize it might not be the right thing to do. And I think if you go to Weavercroft, which they have bought, there's a beautiful laneway by the tower, which would be a much better place to put the roadway if you got to go out onto Harris Road, which would be a much better place by the tower. And I really think there should be a real thorough examination of, I know that wildlife to some people doesn't mean a lot, but to me it does. And also the preservation of some of those beautiful trees in there. Thanks.
Thanks, Ken. Next person.
Jim Bender.
Thank you. Mayor, council, Doug Terry Holmes, neighbors.
Can you state your municipal address, please?
Yep. My name is Jim Bender, 164 Mill Road in Dorchester. I'm on the northeast corner of Christie and Mill. So my main concern, and Laura Lefebvre touched on the vast majority of it, is the sewer alignments, whether you're going to run alignment 1 or whether you're going to run alignment 2. I'm also of the opinion alignment 2 is the way to go. Laura touched on a number of points. I'm going to touch on a couple more. It would involve the complete reconstruction. Sorry, alignment 1 would involve the complete reconstruction of Christie and Mill up to that point. The deepest point that they would have to go would be at the corner of Mill and Christie. They'd have to go down 38 feet to be able to get the slope to maintain from their development down to pumping station number 3. 38 feet. The building behind me, I don't believe is 38 feet tall. So they're going down further than the Flood Exec Center. So, and in order to do that and rebuild it back up, you have to run compactors through there multiple times to compress layers of soil. That is not only going to affect the foundation of my house, it's going to affect the foundation of everybody's house along Christie. As well as when they're excavating, you got a lot of dirt to put somewhere, and there isn't enough room, so you're going to have to truck it out, truck it back in. During that reconstruction, if you use alignment 1, EMS services will only be able to come in from one location, and that'll be in off of Hamilton Road. If there's an issue, fallen tree, car accident between Bridge Street and Hamilton Road, or Bridge Street and Mill Road, fire trucks, ambulances would have to go all the way around and come in from Nilestown, whether they'll go across the river or whether they go out and down Harris and back in. That'd be the only way into that subdivision at that point in time. So that's one concern of mine. The other concern is the vibration of the foundations and whatnot as they're compacting to put stuff back together. So that's what I have to say. I appreciate your time. My recommendation and of our families is don't consider alignment 1 for the sewers. And I'm going to lump the water mains in there too. If you're going to run sewers, you might as well run water with it. Run them up through alignment 2, which is up through the boardwalk and in the bottom end of Acorn. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Bender. Anyone else? We're just going to take a minute and check and see if there's anyone wishing to comment who's online. Before we do that, then, is there anyone in the public calendar who, even though you haven't registered, you'd like to voice your opinion? And again, if you could just state your name and your address for the record, please. Pardon?
Hello there, Mayor and council members. My name is Gordon Stewart. I live at 129 Mill Road. I've been a resident of Dorchester for about 8 years now, and I just love it here. I too support line 2. It's a little bit less intrusive in our neighborhood, but my big concern is, and the reason I'm speaking today is, I don't understand what this is all about. We've got an official plan. What is the sense of a town, a village, or anybody have an official plan? Doug Terry Holmes, who is a very good builder. I've done a lot of bicycling down to St. Thomas Place. Nothing wrong with Doug Terry, but they presented a plan. They presented a subdivision plan. It went with the official plan. They knew what the official plan is, and they're trying to come in here and bulldoze our council, bulldoze our residents into doing something entirely different. And I think that is right. That is wrong. I read the signpost quite a bit, and I see going back 25 years all the time, everybody's always fighting expansion of the village. They like the village the way it is. I love the village the way it is right now. And with this many more people coming in, I don't know what you're going to do with the facilities, like the school for one. The fact that the kids just swarm all over what I call downtown Dorchester, eating their lunch in the library and stuff like that, because they use the library, I'm told, for classrooms and do other things. We're not going to stop the development. We're not trying to stop it, but I think the density of the development has to stay as it is. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to comment? Come on up.
My name's Jack Stelpstra. I'm at 95 Wheeler Ave. And what struck me actually when I was looking at this was in the signpost, it states, Doug Terry states that they've made every effort to address feedback and responsibly and thoroughly. And they say the two major changes was considering a line 2 and 2 traffic circles within their own development. It doesn't address anything about the amount of traffic at Wheeler Ave, which is what Mark suggested, what Mark talked about. And I thought the element of they've made every effort to take from, in June 2020, 1,026 units, to April 2025, 1,193 units, to now 1,343 units. That's going backwards and not forwards. And I still think the mitigation of traffic, one element could possibly be, and could brought up, I think, before, not today, but previous times, is a division of Acorn Valley to the west traffic, and it stays west. And I've, like, for instance, in town here, we got is it Pondview Court and Pondview Drive and Pondview Court. Pondview Court stops. There's a walkway to Pondview Drive, and that extends on. So there's complete division between the two areas. And I believe that from a mitigation of traffic perspective, Acorn Valley looks after its own traffic, take it west and deal with it there. Because when you look at the traffic study too, and Mark's talked very much about that, even in the ADT, the ADT totals for existing traffic is anywhere from 300 to 1,800. When you look at traffic, because Wheeler and Mill and Tyner funnel down to that one corner, and you look at traffic on holidays and stuff like that, and you're adding, so you've got a lot of people coming in, and it's a very tight corner, tight area, and then you start adding another 1,000 vehicles a day, even say on a weekend, into that area. That's going to create a real traffic jam in that funnel. And I don't think it's advantageous to anybody or the subdivision. It's not safe. And especially when you stand at that corner and you look to the west, Hamilton Road kind of curves in and your visibility is minimal. It's not, you don't have a long view, you have a short view. So you're adding all this traffic to it and you're not taking mitigating factors. So my hope is that Doug Terry Holmes does go back and looks at this as a community element that they want to be part of, and they provide a fair assessment on how to mitigate the traffic down into Wheeler Ave. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else who would like to comment or give you an opportunity? I don't seem to be seeing anyone else in the gallery, so I'll ask one more time. Is there anyone here who would like to comment on this application? Okay, so we'll turn it over to anyone who is online.
Someone online.
Okay, do you want to bring them in, Sarah?
Thank you, Your Worship. There's a few members of the public online. I'll ask that anyone attending virtually, if you wish to speak, to please raise your hand in Zoom. So first we have Linda Simek.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you. Do you want to
Wonderful.
state your property address, please?
Yes, I'm at 146 Mill Road, close to the corner of Mill Road and Christie.
Okay, thanks. Go ahead.
And my apologies for not being there in person. With children, it was a little tricky and work, but I'm there in spirit. So I think, first of all, I just wanted to address what the sentiment that Jack had as well, that I really felt that there was a lack of effort to address our concerns on the part of Doug Terry Homes. It seems as though many of the concerns were not commented on or were just ignored. So I do have some points in particular that I would just like some additional clarification on. So the first is that with the proposal at a low end, I believe they're anticipating about 2,100 residents, which I do feel is low because there is a higher density in townhomes and semi-detached homes. Generally speaking, they have a higher than average rate of people per unit, and often multi-generational households, etc., which could bump up the average. So I do believe that their estimates are fairly low on that. Further, this would increase our total population of Dorchester by more than 50% at the lower end of that estimate. They've said that they're looking at about a 3 to 5 year build out for this subdivision. We currently do not have capacity at the schools with portables being brought in and unrealistic wait lists for daycare, where children are phasing out of the need for daycare before they're granted a spot to daycare. So where will we be in 3 to 5 years? Because we also have the addition of the subdivisions that are underway, which will add to the population and increase the strain on those resources. So if we're talking 3 to 5 years, needing that many more places for schools and daycares, we can't reasonably build anything or account for that in that time, other than potentially adding, more portables and keeping kids outside of the schools. I did have some questions as well surrounding the block 192, which is marked as an institutional block. I just wanted some clarification why that small portion was subdivided out from the future development block as a whole, as well as why there was a change to institutional block for 191. Specifically, I was wondering if there was artifacts or other significant items found in these blocks. I also feel that the plan depicts the single family homes south of Tyner, and they're currently zoned R2X. That zoning is the same as the rest of the zoning in the other areas of the subdivision. So I want to confirm that if this is approved, does this necessarily mean that single family homes are even going to be built there, or will these also be high density because they are of the same density zone rating as the rest of the subdivisions, which are the semis and the townhomes? I'd also like to note, it seems that there are erosion limits intersecting the lot lines on lot 160, and the wetland setback is also overlapping the lot 161 lot line as well. I have concerns about the street parking, whether that's proposed along Christie Drive. So according to the plans, there are large volumes of semis and townhomes going in along the Christie Drive street with single car drives, and most homes these days are 2-vehicle homes. So there will most certainly be overflow of vehicles at all times on these roads. And it doesn't appear that there's any actual pull over spots on the side, that it would just all be completely right on the street, which would block critical access on that road. And in my opinion, cause a safety hazard as far as emergency vehicles, cause backlogs with delivery people, as they would not be able to get into driveways either. So it would definitely cause a bottleneck along that stretch. I'd also like to confirm there was a note that the Upper Thames River Conservation Authority is a landowner around the Harry Small Trail. So just looking for some clarification, what areas specifically are under their ownership, and if so, if they've actually permitted the land use change or transfer in the land use. I just wondered if there was also any alternative solutions proposed for the road systems such that the traffic will not connect with the existing Tyner subdivision. Obviously, there is a large concern from the residents in the existing Tyner subdivision about the volume of cars coming through. We did notice a large increase in vehicles even when Dorchester Road was closed. And this will cause backups at the Mill Road entrance where the Frozen Cow is, at the Mill Road and Hamilton Road, basically at the end of the hill there. So that area was already getting backed up just with the small volume of folks rerouting from Dorchester Road down through Mill when Dorchester Road was closed, and it was causing backups getting out onto Hamilton Road. So I can't imagine what that will be like once there's more vehicles driving through there, and that will be the central point when people are going into town. They will be cutting through either Wheeler, Tyner, or Mill down to that single bottleneck point at the end of Mill Road and Hamilton. It should be noted as well that there's no traffic light there, and it's unlikely that one will be permitted there in the near future. So I would definitely see that as a huge bottleneck and safety risk. I'm also wondering if the Christie Drive Road is simply just is just more convenient from a cost and engineering perspective, or if it's actually taking into consideration the best needs of the community and as well the best needs for that subdivision. I would also like to get some clarification on some of the lots. So on most of the lots in the detailed drawings, they're showing a 6-meter setback on the lots, which I'm assuming is like sidewalk allowance and whatnot. But some lots are showing 23 meters. And I just want some clarification what that actually means and what that entails. So some of those are like lot 174, lot 156, lot 157, etc. I'd also like to make a note that will there even be enough demand for this volume of houses? So demand has considerably softened since the COVID boom years, and the active listings and inventory levels are higher than in history, especially in the last year or so. And they do have a downward trend as far as demand. So will there even be enough demand for such a densely populated area? So I think I'd also like to note that the trail, there's notes from Doug Terry that the trail will be reestablished. And I just like some clarification on what that actually means. So as part of this, endangered trees and species at risk will be moved from their current locations and or raised. These are things that can't easily be reestablished. So are we talking, planting a few little city trees and a little flower on the side, or what does this actually entail? And how can we reestablish these mature trees, this mature vegetation that's home to wildlife, species at risk, etc. There's a lot of notes as well that detailed plans will be provided as far as the construction routes, as far as what types of things will be included in the subdivision. But I think we all would like some clarification as to what that actually means. So for example, with the high density development, it's Originally, it was a little vague, in my opinion, and I believe intentionally vague, that it was going to include multiple buildings in this area. Again, that says detailed designs will be a future process, but this leaves residents in a situation where we don't know what's being built there and we don't know what we're agreeing to, and for the city as well. With regards to the water usage, there are a lot of folks in the Tyner area that have water furnaces. So these can use up to 8 gallons per minute when they're running. They have said that if the water wells run dry, that they'll have a contingency plan. In order to have that 8 gallons per minute, that would mean 5 water trucks coming to my house per day to run my heating and cooling system. So I just like to kind of question how feasible would that be, that I'm going to have to sit here and manage a truck coming to my house 5 times a day just to ensure that I have heating and cooling. And that would not include my showering, water usage for drinking water, anything along, cooking, etc., laundry. I also would like to have some amendment to the wording under 4C in the response to the users. Currently, it says the Christie Drive extension is being built in and around the protected conservation lands. This really should be being built over the protected conservation lands. And I think that's a very important distinction. We're not talking it's nearby, it's right over this trail. Also in line with this, it says they understand the concern around the location of the extension in proximity to the wetland and natural area, but how is this actually being addressed? So it's one thing to note that you understand the concern of the residents, but there was no formal acknowledgement of how this was going to be dealt with or what was going to be put in place to handle that. Further, there is a little bit of ambiguity, I believe, in the comments regarding the water supply. So it does say that there should be enough supply for the initial phases of development, but it doesn't specify what that means specifically. So is this initial phase as in startup, or is this initial phase as in all 3 phases of construction are complete? So I would like some clarification on what that means. Further, I agree that I don't think the Christie Drive Mill Road is the appropriate route for the water supply due to the impact of the existing well water and infrastructure here. I have noticed in my personal water supply here from my well, with all the digging that's happening over at Boardwalk, that I have an increase in silica in my water supply. So we've noticed like crystals in our water, not coming out with the water softener, so likely silica. So just the runoff from there. And I believe that digging is probably affecting my well currently. So I can only imagine what it will be like when they're digging directly along the Christie Drive Road. Again, there's also a little bit of ambiguity where they're understanding the concerns of the height over the proposed building, but have proposed the building to be located on an area of the site, which would have minimal impact on the existing residents. But again, we don't know what that looks like. There's no designs. Those were apparently coming in future phases. And further, this increased density will have an impact on the residents, regardless of the location of the site. I would also like some clarifications on the transition from the zone to just west of Wheeler Avenue. So the lots that are backing onto the Wheeler Ave backyards, as well as the lots that are along Street A. They indicated that there is a transition to the high density block. However, that is generally along Street C and D, being a buffer zone for the high density that's proposed at the westernmost end of the subdivision. There isn't any buffer between the current existing Tyner subdivision and those west and to the west and south of Tyner. It immediately goes into the same zoning R2X as the rest of the subdivision that's being built. And I think a big area of concern here from residents is the density, especially when it is directly behind the existing subdivision. So we do know that the flexibility can be valuable, but reducing the lot sizes below the existing bylaw is just going to have serious implications for the community character and the aesthetics of this neighborhood. It will have impacts on our infrastructure, our long-term planning, and we recommend that the development proceed within the parameters of the current bylaw to make sure that those are respected. These bylaws exist to ensure that any developments still fit with the community needs. I also should note that they have indicated that the traffic will be at an acceptable level, but I'd like a little bit more of a definition of that. The residents here do not feel that the volume indicated in the traffic studies is acceptable, and also believe that these are on the low end of what will be the reality of the situation. And we would like more information on the flow anticipated across each of the streets. Residents would prefer to have the traffic be diverted away from the existing subdivision. So they have also indicated that they have requested increased driveway widths from what's currently permitted in the zoning bylaw. Some residents have in the past increased concerns about the length of the driveways, such that a large vehicle such as a pickup truck would not actually fit in the in the actual driveways, and would overhang either the sidewalk or the road in these cases. And again, this was not addressed, but and increased width of driveways will also not address that.
Ms.
Again,
Simic, sorry to interrupt. Just in the interest of time, have you just got a few more questions? We have a couple of other people waiting as well.
So just two more points here.
Sure.
Again, just the understanding the concerns for the traffic. They've again just said we understand the concerns, but that they are not going to construct any roads, etc. And so again, it's it's one thing to say I understand it, but another to address it. And then just lastly, the intention is to naturalize the trail corridor. Again, I'd like some clarification on what that would actually mean. And that's all from my side. Thank you.
Thanks very much. I appreciate your comments. All right, I think there's someone else online. Is there, Sarah?
Yes, Your Worship. We're going to bring in Kristen Shepherd.
Okay. Whenever you're ready, Kristen, go ahead. State your property address, please.
Hi, thank you very much. This is Kristen Shepherd at 2334 Harris Road. Thank you for giving me the chance to speak tonight. I'm sorry I'm not there in person. There's so many concerns that my fellow residents are voicing, and they've done such a good job. I certainly don't need to touch on any of those, although I really agree with everything that's being said tonight. But I just want to reiterate one matter that Ken and Linda have just both spoken about, but I do feel like it's sometimes there's so many kind of catastrophic things that we're worried about in terms of our wells and traffic that this is sort of a footnote. But I do think, taking down the Harry Small Trail to run the road, Christie Drive right through is something we really do need to seriously think about rather than just thinking of it as a, right of way, let's just pave it. Really the trails were one of the main reasons I moved here a few years ago. And I think, maybe we almost take this trail system for granted because, a lot of other communities don't have this. The trail around the mill pond and right down the Harry Small Trail and around the sportsplex over there on Hamilton. It's really what makes this a wonderful place to live. And I've actually never lived in a community where I see so many residents out walking every day. I've been here for over 3 years and I still marvel at it. And I've actually met people on the trail from London and other areas who come to our town specifically because of it, which I didn't realize when I moved in. And I mean, it goes without saying how much wildlife is actually depending on it. So I think despite all the problems that the subdivision is potentially going to create, I'm worried about my well and all of those things, but I think the biggest shock that came to me when I first found out about this was the fact that the trail was going to go. I just didn't think that was a possibility. I think the language that we're constantly using sort of makes this feel like it is a bit of an afterthought, that the trail is really not that important. We do refer to it as the unopened part of Christie Drive, and it kind of states that there's almost like there's no inherent value to it other than as a thoroughfare. And I'm not sure who Harry Small was. I haven't lived here that long, but he was obviously a citizen prominent enough that we would name this beautiful trail after him. So I think as we're considering about leveling it, we should be using that name currently instead of Christie Drive so that we realize it is still an important feature of this town. We also use a lot of language like it's going to be relocated. And that makes us feel almost like we shouldn't be bothered by this. Because how nice of Doug Terry Limited to rebuild it. But it can't be relocated. And that's almost an insult to those of us who enjoy it daily. And there's so many people that walk this trail multiple times a day sometimes. And it's going to be clear cut. It's going to be paved. And when that happens, it's going to be lost forever. And if you don't spend time in nature, maybe paving a sidewalk and putting some grass is going to seem good enough, but that is not the same. And I know they say it's for accessibility, but really I feel that it's just because we cannot replicate what's about to be destroyed. We're not really talking a lot about the environmental assessment, which is over 100 pages long, and I've gone through it a few times, and I know even they felt that that corridor needs to be restored if the road goes through, using native grasses and a variety of plant life. So I'm hoping that if this happens, Doug Terry will consider actually doing it properly, not just paving a path. There are several species listed as threatened or of special concern, including multiple bird species and even trees. There's 7 endangered species or 7 trees that are an endangered species right on the road that are going to be taken down. And I'm not sure why even bother to list things as endangered if we're not going to protect them. There are 31 recommendations in the environmental assessment, so I am wondering if these are all going to be complied with and who's going to be responsible for monitoring them. So if this goes ahead, at the very least, I hope the developers would consider replicating what went on over at the Field of Dreams and the Sportsplex there, the planting of native shrubs, plant species, fast-growing trees like willows, and basically some kind of native habitat put back. It's going to be several years before residents and wildlife are going to benefit, but I think that's the right thing to do for the future. And, Doug Terry actually cites Dorchester's trail system as a selling feature for buying a home in Acorn Valley. So really, let's make that as good as we can. So thank you. I just really wanted to remind us of this because once the chainsaws come in, this is gone forever. Decades of growth is going to be erased overnight. The trees hacked down and mulched, the wildlife displaced, nesting sites erased, territories cut off. We know a lot of animals are passing through there. And, I don't want us to end up being those people that are going to tell the younger generations who are growing up here how great this place used to be, before the roads were packed and the schools were packed and the trail was gone. So thank you. I really hope that council is going to consider this. I know Ken said, perhaps there's another access route as opposed to going right through to Harris. And, Doug Terry, I know is the very first presentation, I believe they said they care about the environment, and I really hope they show that and rebuild nature as best they can. Every time I see trees being taken down on subdivisions, I think, the writer Tolkien always says that, or always said that trees had a lot of enemies and very few advocates. So I hope that as we move forward and consider all the different things that are going to happen, we're really going to think about what that's going to look like when, if the trail has to go and what we can do to replace it. Thanks very much for letting me speak this evening.
Thanks, Kristen. Appreciate your comments. I just want to take a little second here. So there's been a lot of discussion about Harry Small. Well, I knew Harry Small quite well. He was an extremely active member of this community for more years than long before I was even here. Very active and terrific volunteer at St. Peter's Anglican Church, lived right next door, kept an eye on everything, and there were very few things that Harry wasn't involved in this community, and it was really apt that we named that trail after him. So that's a little bit of background on Harry Small for those who don't know. Okay, do we have someone else, Sarah?
Yes, Your Worship, we have Ryan Simmons.
Okay, Ryan, go ahead whenever you're ready and just let us know your property address.
Hi, good evening. Ryan Simmons, resident at 97 Wheeler Ave. I've been a resident here for about 15 years. And honestly, the reason why I chose to be a resident here is to get away from the type of development that is being proposed here. Really enjoy the street, the lack of light pollution, having our own septic, having a nice sized property. We don't have sidewalks here on Wheeler, which does pose some safety concerns. But these are the reasons why I came here, and respectfully, it's concerning to hear the type of changes that are being proposed. Back in October at the earlier public meeting, which I appreciate council allowing these type of meetings to happen to hear the concerns of the community. There's a lot of talk about the safety of the roads in this subdivision here, and honestly, I haven't seen much in terms of the reports that have been resubmitted to address that. They may be minuted somewhere else, but in particular, specific concern with the transportation impact assessment that was provided by Paradigm on 2025-12 4.0. And reading the report, it certainly seems like a kind of off-the-shelf TIA report, and seems to focus on acceptable levels of traffic in terms of road infrastructure, in terms of operations. But I didn't see anything in there in terms of the public safety or non-vehicle traffic and transportation. Specifically, pages 42 to 45 of the 253-page document outlines responses to various public comments, yet none of which speak about the safety concerns in terms of kids walking down the street, using their bicycles, I recall quite a bit of discussion about that in the October 20th meeting of 2025. And forgive my ignorance if that's somewhere else. I just didn't see that addressed since then. And in particular, someone else had brought up, the congestion around the businesses around Hamilton and Mill at the intersection there, where the Frozen Cow is, and the people using the Mill Pond Trail. And I mean, it's a serious concern. I have some kids, and even when I'm riding my bike down that road with them, um, you have to pick, do you go on the sidewalk and have these cars that are parked there? If someone opens their door, they're riding their bike into an open door and likely falling, down a hill towards a pond, or do you cut across in the opposite direction of traffic and try to steer clear of the parked cars? Meanwhile, cars are backing in and out of the parking lot for the Frozen Cow. People are backing out of people's driveways, residents who live there. Anyone who looking at this transportation impact assessment clearly didn't consider the conditions that occur for most of the year, any sunny day, the amount of sports teams and kids every summer, all evening long. This is a giant bottleneck for this subdivision, and regardless if the roads are right sized or not, the concerns I have are around safety for those who have accessibility issues, or young children, or grown adults for that matter, trying to use the trails and to get from the subdivision into the other parts of the community. This is also indirectly, I believe, going to cause additional concern with the sidewalks that I understand are maintained by Thames Center, but owned by the county. And often it's not possible to pass someone, whether they be on a bicycle or two people walking the opposite direction, due to the amount of brush, leaves. There's no guardrails on this stretch of Hamilton Road, just I guess east of Mill Road. And I think the increased amount of traffic alone coming through this neighborhood right now, which has been noticeably concerning since the increase in the Boardwalk subdivision of speeding cars. There's no traffic calming at all on Wheeler Drive currently. And to think that even in the last few years, the amount of concerns has grown significantly, to just think that any more traffic may be coming down this street, and to think that there's a report out there saying that everything's right-sized and that there's no issues. I think it would be helpful to have a study to look at some of these other impacts of these vehicles and not just the infrastructure. With all respect to the applicant is here, their business, regardless of approach or ethics or otherwise. They're here to make a profit. They are not here to look after the best interests of the community. And so my ask is for the council to do their job and to take serious these concerns, and to properly properly listen to what's being said here, and to represent the community properly. Thank you.
And thank you, Ryan. Is that it then for people online?
Your worship, now we have Diane Violet.
Okay. Diane, whenever you're ready, your full name and your property address, please.
Okay, I'm not sure if you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. First of all, I'll start off by saying I do wish that I could have been there in person. Unfortunately, I could not, but I'm grateful that we've got these means for me to be able to at least address not just you, Madam Mayor, and your councillors, but also the people that have attended and those that have the ability to hear what's transpiring this evening. Now, I am not sure if you recall, but I did attend the October 20th, 2025 meeting, and I spoke at that time, but I spoke from not necessarily the details that we've heard tonight, but from a very cautious stance, because your council, Madam Mayor, and the citizens of Dorchester have serious reasons to be concerned about this application. I went through a lot of it. I'm a lawyer, as I mentioned, in October by profession. I'm speaking not as a lawyer necessarily, but it comes with the package. My son is a resident of 2308 Harris Road, and I'm a very, very proud grandmother, and I've been frequenting Dorchester very often, more particularly now because I now live in London. And I've walked the trails. I've enjoyed the community. I've enjoyed the spirit of Dorchester because it's that very rare place where you've got a community that's well bonded, and there's a real care and concern about what happens on a go-forward basis. So when I look at this, and Harris Road is of particular concern to me, and a few of the speakers have brought it up. I read the response by the developer. I don't know him. I found it very vague. I found that it did not address critical issues that need to be addressed because there's serious decisions that have to be made. I'm aware of some of the studies that have been done. I'm very grateful that I was able to look at a lot of the material that Mark Lunick prepared with considerable detail and accuracy. And that helped me determine, how serious all of the different considerations that this council has to make in deciding whether or not it approves or declines an application as it's framed now. And what I see that if the whole purpose of planning is to plan for the future, then you can't deny the past. And if in the past, councillors then, mayors then, in the past, saw a vision that was supported by the community, that it's going to be a quiet, low-density community without having all of the traffic and the issues dealing with higher density developments. It's not a huge urban center, but it's a small community with small, not necessarily negative when I say that, but with no aspirations of becoming a big city. So it concerns me about that. It concerns me, one of your last speakers, Ryan Simmons, and his very valid approach that, children that are walking down, whether it's Harris Road or Wheeler or any of the roads in the community, if those roads now become unwalkable because they're no longer safe, then you've got to consider, is that really what you want in your community? And that would be critical for Harris Road. The traffic and the vehicle counts and so on that I read in Mark Lunick's report are scary, to be honest, because that's what's shown on the report. But what's the reality going to be? How is it going to be developed? What care is going to be taken to ensure that no one is compromised? It's not after the fact that we say we should have and we didn't. But so that concerns me. And even in terms of Kristen Shepherd, who's also on Harris Road, and I've just met, her comments are very valid because we have to maintain a sensitivity to our environment. If our goal is to protect endangered species and wildlife, we can't take a haphazard view of it. So I want to bring that up because that's also critical. Now, one of the things that I looked at and I thought was important to bring out is growth is good. There's nothing wrong with growth. It's the planning of that growth, the staging of that growth. And not like someone says, a growth focused on profits, but a growth focused on mirroring what the community really wants. as an area where they are proud to live in, and they feel safe in. And when you look at, I looked up, what does the world out there see when you do a Google search on the community of Dorchester. Forgive me, I've got a scratchy voice because I'm a bit not well. Let me put it that way. And what comes out of it is the community is quiet, it's safe, it's family focused, and it's got a ton of green space with a genuine environmental concern. So you don't want to move away from that. Not saying that you would, but your decision, Madam Mayor, and that of your fellow councillors are very serious, very difficult, I'm sure. But you've got to make sure that what you have to weigh has to be weighed in favor of the community, not of the developer, not of the development. It shouldn't contradict low density focuses when you've got reports that come out that completely reverse prior reports, that contradict that Watson report, that push radical growth, where you inverse from I think, I'm not clear if it was a 65% low density growth to a 35. And now, if I recall what Mark Lunick said, it was now being presented as a 15% low and an 85% high growth. How can you make a decision just based on those contradictions? So either there's flawed reports, and if flawed reports are being used to make critical decisions affecting all of those residents in that community, and me as a family member, a grandmother that wants to visit and spend time in the community because that's where my son lives and my grandchildren are. I'm concerned about that, and I'm here because my son can't be here. And I want to make sure that his voice, through me, as the mom, as the grandmother, who happens to have a legal background, is heard. And I'm grateful that I'm being allowed to do that. But I think at the end of the day, you can't really make any decisions with how this application is framed. I don't see it. I think you risk having more objections. You risk having this brought in front of a tribunal for sure, because there are too many elements that I'm seeing from what the presenters have made tonight. And this town is so fortunate to have concerned citizens that not just take the time to come and talk to you. They've done their homework. They've read reports. When I saw the letter from the Terry, I'm not clear of the Doug Terry developer, what concerned me is this supposed to be a feel-good letter? What's being addressed? What answers am I getting from this letter from a developer that I'm supposed to be able to trust will do what you're hoping that he's going to do, or that company will do, in reshaping? And that's what would happen. You're reshaping the community. So, and in that reshaping, what are the consequences of reshaping? I can't see anybody, so it's maybe harder for me to talk, but so at the end, and I have no idea if anybody sees me or just hears me, but at the end of the day, what are the consequences of this? Can you get it back once the decision is made? You can't. So whether you increase traffic on Harris Road to the extent that it creates other dangers, or on Wheeler, or on redirection of Christie, or you eliminate a wonderful, beautiful, environmentally sensitive area, those are critical decisions. Not counting, you might increase the tax base with having more development, but that also has consequences. It has consequences in the provision of municipal services. Developers going to be long gone. So you're going to have taxpayers that are going to say, why are our taxes going up? Why do we need this? Because maybe a decision was made in the past that permitted a development that ought to have been scaled down. So I'm not saying that you shouldn't have growth. Of course you should. What I am saying is that there's a reason we get into planning. There's a reason we have the Planning Act. There's a reason why, even though we have an incentive to encourage planning, the province is saying, okay, we need more housing, we need this. One of the speakers, forgive me, I don't recall her name, but brought up a very valid point. There are fluctuations in demand, and right now we're certainly not at a high end. But even in
Excuse me,
those
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we're going to have to move it along here.
I get
if
it. So
you
just let me
wanna-
finish. I understand.
Just wrap it up a little bit, please.
Yeah, no, I understand, but I'm hoping that, listen, I'm not here to rattle on. I'm here to make sure that concerns are expressed. And I'm here to say that as a representative for my son and speaking for him, I've certainly endorsed the speakers this evening, all of them. There's not one of them that said that they support the plan as it's presented. So I'm saying to you, and I'm saying to you, Madam Mayor, and to your council, I wouldn't want to be in your seat because you're going to have a very difficult decision to make in a community of taxpayers to answer to. I thank you very much for permitting me to speak.
And I do thank you for your comments. The points are well taken. And I don't like to be interrupting people, but we do have a pretty full agenda here. Is there anyone else? Sarah?
Yes, Your Worship. I'm going to try Gerald Lohoyce. He had his hand up at one point.
Okay. All right.
Hi. I live at
Hello.
120. Hi, I live at 125 Wheeler in Tyner Estates.
Okay, go ahead.
And my big concern is it's rather vague. It's nice for the developer to say things. The summary, I would say the speakers are bang on with all their presentations, and I would really like if the developer, Doug Terry, would clearly in writing portray what exactly he will do, not what hypothetically could happen. So I moved out here, 47 years ago, and I did it for the same reason as other people. There's a beautiful trail, there's wildlife. Why are we disturbing that? Like, I think the developer should scale back his plans. If we can keep the Tyner trails as much intact as possible, that would make me happy anyway. So I'll keep it short. Just in summary, I just want the developer to clearly in writing state what he'll do. Because right now, a lot of people, it's just hypothetic, right? And after it's built, like people said, it's too late. Can't go back. So that is what I wanted to impress. And I think the developer needs to address this to council. Thank you.
Thank you again. All right, Sarah, anyone else?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll just do a last call to anyone online. Shane or Valerie, if you wish to speak, to please raise your hand. I think that concludes the online portion.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. So at this point, I'm going to turn this over to council for any questions that they may have. And then following that, we'll go to Doug Terry Holmes. Oh, okay. Okay, I understand that Doug Terry Holmes wants to go first and make their comments. Just on a personal note, unfortunately, I've had a long-standing commitment tonight, and I'm going to have to leave here about 6:30. But at that point, I will turn the chair over to Councillor Crockett to continue the meeting. So there's no rush. Please take your time. We're taking a 5-minute recess? Okay. It seems we're taking a 5-minute recess. So it is 6:11, so we'll be back here, about almost 20 after 6. Okay, take a break.
So he started to drive by himself and 4 dogs. The horses went separately for somebody else. Yeah, he's east of Sydney, not far from the ocean. Well, yeah, I don't know if I'd want to live there. Like, Sydney's a shit. Yeah, and Debbie was out there, and Sydney's like east end of London. Old east. Yeah, I was just staying in the free press story. We're looking for 35. Maybe just keep staying and build. It's just greed, man. It's just greed. I was wondering if this bullshit. See, when they moved in, they didn't know what was happening behind them. Woman that actually sold that out. I went to an open house. Yeah. Lives on the street. I went to an open house. She's in there. And somebody asked me. And I said, well, you know, nothing will happen for 20 years. And I said, that property is going to develop. And she just looked at me, and as soon as the guy that owned the house went, he told him, he came knocking on my door. Yeah, I told him, I said, look, it's common knowledge that it's been bought by a developer. I said, she should have told the guy that. Exactly. She should have told the guy that, and you've got a nice house gonna sell. Yeah, it is. Even through it? Yeah. I went through it for sale last time. And I watched that build over the outside. You gotta give me one of those votes. Tell the guy I'll advertise. Tell the guy I'll advertise. Yeah, Debbie's good friend. Her and her husband are part owners with on Golden Pond. On Golden Pond. Right there. Keep going. That's right. They were here already. The years you got on.
Ladies and gentlemen, could we call the meeting back to order, please? Okay, so at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to close the public. Oh, wait a minute. I think I'm getting a signal here. One more person?
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to do one final last call for anyone online, should they wish to speak, just to raise their hand virtually. Okay, we're good. Thank you, Your Worship.
Okay. So at this point then, what we're going to do, this is kind of a formal thing of actually closing the meeting, which means that the public has had an opportunity to have their input. So at this point, I'm going to ask for a mover and a seconder to close the public participation meeting held pursuant to the Planning Act at 6:22 p.m. And we'll carry on with Doug Terry Holmes to make their presentation. A mover and a seconder to adjourn. Councillor Crockett and Councillor Lockie, all in favor? And that carries. And I'm going to step out of the chair and turn it over to the very capable Councillor Crockett.
Thank you. Ooh. Hello. Thank you, Mayor. Give me a little bit of grace on this because it's my first time using the script. But can I please call the representative from Doug Terry to come forward in response to some of the questions from the public?
Good evening. Oh, it is on. Okay. Good evening, Mayor and members of council. I'm Tracy Tucker. I'm the manager of land development at Doug Terry Homes. So we just first wanted to acknowledge, thank you everyone for coming out tonight. We have heard your comments and we will review to see if there's anything that needs to be changed and addressed further. We will meet with staff again to come up with the next steps. And I guess to start off, there does seem to be some confusion on the unit counts. From our original submission, they have not materially changed. The units are still approximately 200 for singles and semis, 21 for towns, and then the high density in this first three phases is, sorry, this is for the first three phases, the counts, would be about 398 units. That would be based on the 100 units per hectare. And then the future development includes approximately 540 additional units in the future of medium and low density housing. And just for reference, the high density, it can skew the perception, but that portion of the site is actually only about 9% of the entire development. The rest of the development would remain as single family and low and medium density housing. And that the full build out of the entire site, which would include, the additional 540 units to the north, this is more than likely more than 10 years out. The first few phases we would expect would be that 3 to 5 year time, could be longer, just depends on market absorption. There was a couple comments, questions about the 2 institutional blocks. So those were done to address the archaeological sites. So they have been made into institutional blocks. They are set. We're setting those based on parameters through the ministry and through our archaeological consultant. And to address the street parking concern, so all the roads are built to minimum municipal standards, and we will work with the municipality on where street parking will be permitted. But with the minimum standards, there would be street parking on one side of the streets. This can be prevented through parking restrictions if it was decided that Christie Drive shouldn't have parking on it. And then we have also proposed the increased width in driveway, which would help to reduce the need for on-street parking because it would give enough space to park 2 cars in the front yard of each property. Then I guess the other item was the naturalization and the renaturalization with the relocation of the Harry Small Trail. So our intention would be that would be with naturalized grasses, local native trees, shrubs, grasses, flowers, to make it somewhere where wildlife can continue to inhabit in the future or re-inhabit in the future. And we've done that in other subdivisions. We do try to keep as much naturalization in our subdivisions. We were a big part of the St. Thomas effort to start naturalization in the city. And we are continuing with that. And that is our intention on this site, is to continue to naturalize with all the trails, with the north-south trail. Again, that would be naturalized as it gets built out. From a accessibility standpoint and from the municipal standard for trails, that is why we have suggested that they would be paved trails in the future, as that is the current municipal standard. I think I will turn it over to Alex to address some of the other concerns.
Good afternoon, council and public. My name is Alex Muirhead. I'm a civil engineer with CJDL Consulting Engineers out of Tilsonburg. We're working with DTL on the Acorn Valley subdivision. I've written down a number of comments. I'm going to focus more on some of the detailed engineering comments, and then I know Rajan Phillips from Paradigm is virtually on the call to speak to the traffic. And I believe Francis Proto Bedard from OnGlobe is on the call as well to speak to dewatering efforts. And then Paige Vroom from Vroom and Associates is virtually as well able to speak to environmental mitigation questions specifically. A number of comments, of course, related to the sanitary alignment, alignment 1 versus 2. We are actively working with staff at the municipality pursuing alignment 2 and alignment 1 to confirm which one would be preferred from public, staff, safety, dewatering, economics, all those standpoints to there. So alignment 1 has certainly not been chosen as the path that's for sure going to happen. Both options are still being looked at. Along with that, we have been speaking with the boardwalk development as well, as it does need to cross their lands to go across alignment 2. In regards to water supply, there may have been, in our report, it may not have been easy to read through. What our water supply comment was meant to say was that there's an existing 6-inch water main at the end of the Tyner Estates subdivision right now. The first phase that's proposed of approximately 100 units is able to connect to that existing water main that's there to supply those homes. Any further build out of the apartment block or any further units within that subdivision requires connection to the larger 12-inch water main that's stubbed at the boardwalk development right now. So that comment wasn't meant to say that there isn't adequate water supply in Dorchester to supply the development, just that there is a phased approach to the connection to the Dorchester system as a whole. And we have confirmed with municipal staff, as we're aware that they're working on their long-term water supply study right now as well, that we'll keep looking at build out of Dorchester and ensure that it's all looked after as the village continues to grow. Regarding a detailed item on UTRCA ownership limits, the Harry Smalls Trail is not owned by the UTRCA. There's a parcel of land at the north limit of the site where that pedestrian connection to Mill Court was proposed. The UTRCA owns a parcel of land up in there behind Mill Court that trail would be proposed to be crossing. And we have spoke with the UTRCA about it, and they're reviewing that application as part of our submission package. This one isn't specific to engineering, but there's a question about setbacks and what's shown on the draft plan. The dimension of the width on the draft plan is normally shown at 6 meters from the front yard, which is the standard zoning setback. Some of the lots are what we would call a reverse pie shape, which means they get narrower as you go further back on the lot. So in order to measure call it the tight point at the lot, we measure at 23 meters back from the lot. That's not to say that a house is going to be put there or anything of that nature. It's just more as a way of dimensioning how wide that lot is, to use a consistent method for each lot. Regarding street parking that Tracy mentioned, DTL has proposed to try and widen the driveway coverage from the current minimum as well, to try and ensure that there isn't too much congestion of on-street parking and leave more room for off-street parking. And then to add to that as well, in terms of the front yard setback, a standard zoning setback is 6 meters, which is around 20 feet from the garage to the property line. There would be another approximately 5 feet to the back of the sidewalks. You would have effectively have 25 feet from the garage to a sidewalk if you were on the side of a road that had a sidewalk. If you were on the side of a road that didn't have a sidewalk, it would be another 10 feet approximately to the back of the curb as well. So you'd be closer to 30 or 35 feet there from the garage. In terms of the monitoring for the dewatering, I'll let Francis speak to that one specifically. And in terms of the unit count that Tracy had mentioned, the overall unit count has not changed. Our servicing reports may have skewed things a little bit to confuse some people, that we look at a higher unit count than what's actually being proposed, just to make sure all the sewers and the water and everything to that effect are more than looked after with our subdivision design. I believe that's all the items I had written down here, apart from the traffic, the dewatering, and the environmental comments that the other consultants can speak to. I'm not sure if council has any specific questions for us while we're up here right now, or if you wanted to hear from the other consultants first.
It's my understanding that we're going to respond to all of the public questions first and then turn it to council questions. So Sarah, could you, I'm not sure if there's a preference of who goes first.
Probably traffic. That seemed to be the main concern, probably, if Rajan is able to speak to that one.
So Rajan, could you please unmute yourself?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Tracy and Alex, for leading the responses. Yeah, I got quite a badgering anyway, so that's fine. That's part of our work. I have a few things to say, but before I get into the responses on the impact on Wheeler Road and other neighborhood streets, I want to make one point about the unit count and trip generation. The preference for single family or high density units, that's up to planning and planning consultants and council and the public. But what I would like to say is that the trip generation associated with a single family unit is almost double, is really double the trip rate associated with a high density apartment unit. So if that is 1, this is 0.5. So with the 466 single family units that were included in the first draft plan that was presented in 2020, on which we based our first traffic study, that would have created 446 trips in the afternoon peak hour. In comparison, 488 high density units that were included at that time would generate 203 trips. So that's the difference, the transportation or traffic impact difference between single family detached homes and apartment units. In the first traffic study that we did, we estimated a total of 692 trips with 466 single family units. In the latest report that we presented in December 25, the total trip generation estimate was 587 units because the balance had shifted between in the unit distribution. That is just for your consideration. I would present that. And in regard to all the other comments that were made, I appreciate listening to them. And just to make one point, the traffic study in a development setting is not a static document. It evolves in response to comments that we hear from the public throughout the planning process. So initially, when we do the study, our focus is in consultation with municipal and county staff, is focus on infrastructure and road capacity, intersection capacity, because if there is a problem, nothing else will work. So why the report is silent on safety and on community impacts, I hear that loud and clear. But what the traffic study also shows is the volumes generated from this development and the other developments that are considered are not significant in terms of roadway capacity. They are well within the capacity of every road. That doesn't mean that people who live on any one of those 3 roads, Mill, China, or Wheeler, will not have concerns. They will, of course, be concerned because the volumes that they're experiencing now are going to increase. No question about that. But they are not increasing to a point where the road cannot sustain it. That's the technical response. There is a social response, which we will address later. And so what it means is the nuisance effect for community or for residents arises from high volumes of traffic or speed differential. Safety is a factor of both. So when we don't address safety specifically, it is because the surrogates for safety, like high volumes or high speed, is not quite evidently present here. But we would, as Alex said and Tracy said, we will provide some supplementary information for the consideration of the public and council, which will address these. So that's in terms of the volumes that this development will generate, the road system can sustain that. And there are also the number of roads so that the traffic can be dispersed rather than being concentrated on one road or on one situation. That is the plus point of this study area. At the same time, the subject lands have constraints in the sense there cannot be a development north to Hamilton Road from these lands because of the natural environmental features. And it is also not possible to extend Christie Drive going east due to the same environmental constraints. So the connection to Harris is obvious. And connection to Harris will also benefit existing residents on Wheeler, Tyler, and Mill Road, because they can go on Christie going west and on Harris to go north or south wherever they are living. So overall, adding this new road will benefit current residents, even as they are going to be impacted by new traffic from this new development. That's the way life work system works. And so what we will do is, and we have shown in the report the volumes that are going north to Hamilton are using either Wheeler or Harris. And volumes that are going south are going on Mill Road, Dorchester Street, etc. So, but between Wheeler, Tyner, and Mill Road, there could be distribution. That will happen when people start driving up and down. But we concentrated everything in one intersection, Wheeler and Christie, to assess the total impact. And the total impact from a capacity point of view is minimal. So if people go on all those three roads, the impact on Wheeler will be distributed. That's point one. And the new road connection between Mill Road and Dorchester, which will be about 600 meters south of Christie, that will also open up a new avenue for traffic distribution, which will minimize the concerns or address part of the concerns that were rightfully expressed at this meeting today. The other major technical point is that we based how people who are going to live in this new subdivision, where they will go and in which direction, was based on the existing traffic distribution. That will likely change because there could be more trips going south than what we have estimated based on the existing distribution, then going north, and that's the one that is causing problem to residents on Wheeler. So we will provide some alternative scenarios with ranges of traffic volumes, how they will be distributed, and how they can be accommodated by the road system. That may alleviate some of the concerns. And traffic calming, we did not discuss, but that is something that can be addressed as the development application proceeds through consultation between the developer and the municipality and the public. And we will be happy to provide any technical input that may be necessary. I think those are the main points. So we have listened to the comments raised today, and we appreciate them. And we will address them in a supplementary addendum or information package. Thank you.
Thank you, Rajan. Alex, do you want to?
Yeah, I was just going to thank Rajan for his comments and then say it might be best to go to Francis next to speak to the dewatering, and then afterwards Paige could speak to the environmental items. You will have to unmute yourself, Francis.
Hi. Well, first, thank you everybody for your comments. I think it's really interesting on our side to hear what you have to say. I'm gonna start with the dewatering questions on mostly sanitary sewers. Well, what we recommend here is an approach where there's some monitoring during the work and even after to make sure that we've done some evaluation of the area that could be of interest. But there are things like the distance to the excavation, even the depth of the well, because if you have a large water head in your well, the impact is not going to be the same as a neighbor with smaller water in the well. So that's something that we want to make sure that is considered during the survey, during the construction. And also, I just want to address that we've done a preliminary calculation right now about the impact, but we want to make sure that we address that in future detailed planning to make sure that we have a right evaluation when the project, when the final plans are produced. So that's one of the things that we want to address on that. And another thing I saw in the comments is the water budget of the area. We've looked a lot of on groundwater and on a general base of let's say the general limits of the project. But that's something that we are working on with the civil engineer here to look at overall the interaction between surface and groundwater and all the low impact development method that could be used to limit the impact here. So I think that covers what I had in my notes.
Thank you, Francis. Paige, would you like to go ahead? You just have to unmute yourself.
Hi, yep, I'm here. Yeah, interesting listening to all the comments and concerns. I guess from my aspect, we understand the importance of protecting, the wetlands, wildlife, habitat on this site. We've done full floral and faunal surveys, and we've built in, as you can see, a lot of mitigation measures into our recommendations. As well, our team will continue to be involved through the detailed design stage, doing the planting plans, the restoration efforts, and the post-construction monitoring to ensure those environmental protections are properly implemented.
Thank you. At this point in time, I'd like to ask the three of you to remain online because we're going to have council ask their questions now, and I believe Doug Terry representatives will be answering in sequence. With that, I'll turn it over to Councillor Heeman, Ward 1.
Well, hello. Well, thank you for the honor of speaking first, and thank you everyone for coming here tonight, and thank you for still being here. It's a long thing, so I'm going to try and get to the point. I'm going to answer Mark's question first. So I live on the busiest road in the township. We see over 6,000 cars on our road, according to the Middlesex County Traffic Study. And so I know what that's like. I wouldn't wish that upon anyone who didn't sign up for that. And I also saw what it was like when the bridge was out, and that wasn't bad either. So I hope that addresses that question. When we talk about this in terms of engineering limits, I think that's relevant because a local road can go up to 10,000 traffic counts. Like that's what, that's what they're engineered for, right? So when they talk about it's within the bearing capacity of the road, there's a lot of capacity on average roads, and normal engineering standards. Is that necessarily desirable in terms of going from, a nice quiet back road to being, up there? Like the northern part of Missouri Road sees up to 3,000 counts. which isn't too far away from Mark's calculation. And again, that's a main, what I would consider an arterial road, or is the main north-south corridor in the north part of this township. So I do think that's relevant, and I think that I think that there's other ways to do this. I think that there's ways to look at this such that we're actually balancing the priorities. And I really appreciate the comment about how designs can funnel traffic in specific ways. And I think that's relevant here. It is, there are more, it's good to have an additional outlet onto Harris Road, unless you live on Harris Road, I would understand that. But why are we building it through a wetland? Again, we're not building it to Hamilton because there's a wetland. And I think Ken's comment is spot on. Doug Terry owns land on that road with access that doesn't go through a wetland. Right? So, and I'll give them the benefit of the doubt in that area is not in the official town boundary, right? So okay, it's a little more complicated than just waving your hand, but we're doing an official plan amendment for high density. Why can't we do an official plan amendment for the urban boundary so that we can actually plan a nice route? And maybe that would actually service the long-term future of the community with Boardwalk Phase 2, as has been identified with, the number 2 option for utilities. So I think there have been a lot of changes from the province that make things easier for development, but it also makes it easier to make changes that are better for your community if everybody at the table is willing to work together. So, and that's what's great about tonight, is that everybody is here. And, I mentioned that part about the southern access because Ken mentioned it. And, we're on council. Those things have to go through council. So, that's an open-minded, creative solution. And also the province changed it so that we do have 5-year spare capacity of urban development boundaries. So maybe that might be worthwhile to your 35 acres to the south that you own, and you might be interested in doing something with at some point in time, and also is going to contribute to traffic in this neighborhood. And the additional lots to the north that are unclassified, those are going to be contributing additional traffic that we're not considering right now. So I don't think that these people's concerns are unreasonable, because we're looking at the situation, we're looking at a snapshot, and there's a much bigger picture here. And I think we're all smart enough to look at the big picture. So that's a bit of a rant. I'm going to go on to another sub rant. I got two more left. Okay. So I really think that the species at risk element, what are we doing? What are the Mill Pond and the Dorchester Swamp is a provincially significant biodiversity site. This is part of our natural heritage for not just Ontario, but Canada. This is the most biodiverse environment we have in Canada. And, I'm sorry, we can't, we're not supposed to be in there because it's a wetland. And we're going to get it's the only way, so the only way these things are mitigated, you need to show, you can get permits to do, there's always rules, and then there's permits to go around the rules. So that's when they say that things can be addressed. It means they're going to get the permits that will allow them to do the thing that they want to do. Okay. So in order to get the permit to cut down those 6 trees, you have to go to the Ministry of Environment and you get an overall benefit permit, which has a number of different requirements. And part of that is showing that you don't have an alternative, that you have to do this. And we know you have an alternative because you own land that will allow you to do that. So, and like 6 trees, okay, 6 trees. These are black ash trees. You ever seen a black ash? They have these wonderful large bases because they grow in wetlands. they only grow in the Carolinian zone in southern Ontario, which is 25% of their total North American range. And guess what happened to ash trees? They got decimated because of emerald ash borer. So the ones that survived are significant germplasm for the future of that species. So I probably wouldn't cut them down, because you want to replace them. How are you going to, so you're going to go to the swamp, plant some seeds, and make sure that those seeds grow up. I don't think that that's going to happen. And it's a lot more work than just keeping it where it is. And yeah, so the mill pond, the Harry Small Trail, these are important parts of our community because of these ecological features that have taken centuries to get to the state that they are. So yeah, and that black ash is critically endangered. That's the highest level you can get under the Species at Risk Act. So why even have it if you can get a permit? Moving on. So we've talked about the institutional zones. Those are because of archaeological studies. And again, people who live in this community know the significance of this site, but they may not know the significance of this site to Ontario. So the Calvert site, which is one of the first documented cases of the Glen Meyer civilization in the Iroquois development from 1100 AD, so over 800 years ago. So, and that is what they call a type site, in which it marks in the history of the area the differences between civilizations. And that is right next door to this development. You can get a book that thick on that site. I haven't seen a single page of these archaeological studies. I believe that they are done because I trust this wonderful woman beside me, but I think it is part of the public discourse that we should have an understanding of what's going on in these things with the proper protections. But it's part of doing this right. You know, that's another third element. Like, there's so many things that make this one of the crown jewels of our community, and we just ask that you treat it like that. So I'm going to conclude, but this, you know, there's a bunch of things in our peer-reviewed comments from Stantec. They have a lot of concerns. I think there's also a lot of things, again, with the setbacks for the species at risk. Just going back to the black ash, because I can't stop myself. You have to be in conformity with the provincial plan to, if you're going to preserve it, you have to look at the provincial plan that shows what it recommends for these populations. And you know what that plan recommends? You put them as natural setbacks, as environmental protection blocks. That's what they recommend to preserve this species, not cutting it down. So yeah, just one example of the many findings in our peer-reviewed study that I hope you look at. And again, I've been a little hot because this is all very complicated stuff, and it's things that are close to our hearts. But again, thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for listening. And we look forward to working with you on resolving some of these things. Again, I think it's doable, and we got the people and we got the know-how. So let's do it right. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. I'm not sure if there's a representative that would like to respond to any of those comments at this time.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council, acting. My name is Darren Lyle from Cyril J. DeMeyer Limited. We're the civil engineering firm working with Doug Terry Limited. So I will defer some comments on the Black ash specifically to our environmental consultant Paige, who's remained on the line. Starting, I guess there's probably three main kind of topics there, Councillor Heeman, to try to address here. So starting with the traffic, you are correct. DTL or Doug Terry Limited does own the Weaver Farm, I guess call it, the Harris Road Farm to the south of the subject lands today. The brief history on that is they bought it a few years after buying the original Christie Drive farm. So the Christie was the subject to the original applications. All of the studies were started first, but we certainly aren't working in a vacuum on the 83 Christie Drive parcel only. So are in kind of full proper planning consideration of all of the lands that DTL owns south of the subject application today, which has two distinctions even within it itself. The piece of it to the north that's within the urban growth area right now, and the piece of it to the south that's currently outside of it. Obviously, DTL being a land developer would be, you know, they would certainly wish their future lands be considered for potential expansion, but that's a conversation for another day. But it is prudent that we're looking at the long-term planning of that. So I guess as an example, the two southerly streets on the plan, streets C and D. So we've provided two adequate road access points to those lands that will be extended in the future. So as part of that, and although granted it is not detailed on this plan, but we kind of have internal working concepts where there will be an additional road connection provided to Harris Road by the radio tower, I guess, as the one speaker proposed today. So that, although that has no official status and anything like that, and is outside of the urban boundary, as you acknowledge, that is part of our long-term plans on the site. And is kind of in the working drafts of the concepts that we have. With the staging of the property, it did not seem like an overall balanced, wise solution to omit the westerly connection to Harris Road as proposed today, putting all your eggs in one basket, hoping for that possible future road connection further south. The traffic distribution, the servicing, the EIS factors, the social factors, they all have to be weighed. And omitting that street connection was going to have further negative impacts on the existing traffic on Wheeler and Tyner. So we've proceeded with that connection as proposed for those reasons. With respect to the traffic generation from the future development block, and I know there's been some confusion on unit counts that we tried to address earlier, and really that there wasn't really that much really a material change at all to the unit counts. It was just kind of tallied up in a misleading way in some of the reports. But the traffic generation from the future lands to the north that don't currently have lots proposed still has been estimated in the traffic report. So there's not kind of this 500 units of unaccounted for traffic generation or anything. That is all contemplated in Paradigm's report. Do you want to ask a quick response to that, or?
I don't want to get into it.
Yeah, no, it doesn't need to.
But yeah, our peer review does have significant concerns with that report, just in terms of basic continuity between the numbers. So, yeah, I'm not going to speak for our engineer is not here, but just to note that there are noted concerns with the basic numbers. So.
Apologies. I'm just wondering if council would like to stay on the topic of traffic right now to kind of keep the meeting moving forward. And so you don't have to go up and down consistently. So with that, Councillor Lockie, do you want to ask any of your questions pertaining to traffic?
Okay, thank you. I just want to mention that I recognize that this is going to be the most impactful decision that we're going to make on this term of council. And we have to weigh the needs of the people that are here now, the people that are going to be here in 50 years. And then we also have to factor in the wildlife species who don't have a strong voice and aren't here to speak for themselves. So on the traffic notes, I do have a question for Rajan. So when this study was done, did it factor in the fact that we're Thames Center, we have no public transportation, and everybody drives their cars everywhere in this village?
Thank you. Thank you for the question. No, we did not quite address that directly, but we can certainly have consultation or discussion with the county and municipal staff and identify any plans for transit in the future and address that appropriately. But we have considered active transportation and or TDM measures, which as appropriate to the development can be identified. We would be happy to do that.
Okay, thank you. And I'll also answer Mark's question. In that, yeah, of course not. I would not want to have 6,000 vehicles on my street, especially if my street wasn't equipped to have that many vehicles. If I had no sidewalks and, it was just a complete through with it. I definitely understand your concerns with that.
Is that for me?
No, it was just a statement for Mr. Lunick.
Okay, thanks.
Oh, I went too close. Do either of you want to respond to any of the other inquiries that Councillor Lockie mentioned?
Okay, so yeah, so moving on from traffic then, I guess. Or sorry.
Working on the
Working on-
governance here. I have a couple questions if I can.
Well, we'd like to speak to the black ash trees and the EIS comments too, but
Yeah,
sorry.
we're just going to continue on traffic at this point. So
Understood.
one of the concerns that I had as well is that the numbers of cars in these studies do not equate to delivery vehicles or other commercial vehicles that will be in the area. Further to Council Lockie's comment, we do not have public transportation. So everyone will be driving, which will be a parking nightmare in and of itself, but I believe that's been addressed earlier, that you're going to be working with the planners on that, so I won't focus on it. The other aspect is just to put into perspective coming into this meeting, I was trying to look at what comparable roads were out there that we had traffic counts for in regards to the numbers that were proposed in the study. And with that, Middlesex County just did a traffic study in 2025, and local roads threshold, although I understand that local roads and county roads and different variations of roads are not specific to traffic counts, but local roads are kind of that maximum 2,000, 3,000, go up to county roads from that. And with that, there's around 17 county roads in Middlesex County with the threshold of about 1,000 to 1,500 cars a day. And there's 31 county roads that have around that just under 2,000 mark conclusive. So just to put a perspective on kind of what that looks like in daily traffic counts, and it's very significant to our residents. So with that, I will conclude the comments on traffic and we can move into the environmental concerns. Paige, I believe that goes over to you if you want to unmute yourself.
Sorry. Yep. I can speak to the black ash a bit. So, yes, it is, a native wetland tree species. It's declined significantly across Ontario because of the emerald ash borer, the invasive beetle. Now, the good thing about this, like one of the tests for us as to, if this impact is significant on this species or its habitat, One of the tests here is that the habitat will still remain in the remainder of the wetland. We also have, this site has hundreds of black ash on it. So that is why for this, the stretch of the roadway, we have 2 trees that meet the test for the ESA, the Endangered Species Act, that has to be addressed. There's 2 trees that meet the size criteria and health criteria. And then, we still have hundreds remaining. There's black ash in that southwest area. There's black ash in the southeast area, and there's tons of black ash in that northern tamarack swamp. So that is why, it's not a significant impact on the species, and why, we're able to, go ahead and move towards the C permit with the MECP for the 2 trees that will be impacted.
Councillor Heeman.
Hello, thank you. So your report says there's 27 trees on the property. So there may be additional trees within the surrounding area, but I can only deal with the facts that were given to me. And what was identified in the road allowance is 6 trees, not 2. So again, you may have better information. I will grant that. But it's not, I'd use the black ash as just one example, right? So if we look at what are endangered species, we have the black ash, we have butternut, we have bats, we have the monarch butterfly. We look at threatened species, we have confirmed bobolinks, nesting pairs, barn swallows, 13 individuals, bank swallows, 6 individuals, wood thrush. Wood thrushes were the first endangered species I learned about. In addition to eastern meadowlark habitat. And one of the things that got me into politics was actually helping promote habitat for bobolinks and meadowlarks, and actually paying people to keep from cutting the grass in their meadows to allow them to nest. And then the MNRF has identified balding turtles within the tamarack swamp, which, to your point, if we're looking at the adjacent lands, is in the adjacent lands. So what's to stop it from getting into these wetlands, which also hasn't been studied? And we haven't got on to special concerns or rare species, or the regionally rare floral species, of which there are 48 that were identified on this property alone. So I think some of these things should, again, if you look at our engineer's remarks in terms of how to proceed on some of these matters, I think that these should not simply be dismissed. Thank you.
I'll turn it over to Doug Terry representatives.
Okay. Thank you. Was there any other kind of EIS related comments from council first, and then maybe we could try to address the balance of them at once, or?
Can you expand on EIS?
Sorry, the environmental.
Thank you.
Apologize.
Yeah. Councillor Lockie, would you like to ask any questions?
No, for environmental, I don't have anything. It's kind of hard to top everything that Councillor Heeman had commented on. Thanks for all of your research on this. And, as chair of the Environmental Advisory Committee, these are very, very important concerns that we need to understand better before we make any decisions.
Thank you, Councillor Lockie. Just to add to this, I just want to reiterate that these systems are assets and they cannot be replaced. And there's a difference between the protection and the mitigation of those. I know that we talked about more so species specific from a council lens, but I think that there's also other impacts that need to be thoroughly addressed that our engineers had concerns about in regards to stormwater runoff impacts on the high density being so close and adjacent, as well as adequate buffering zones and protection with the road volume that's going to be right next door to it. I think overall, the loss of mature trees and native species is going to have a very negative ecological impact and needs to be looked at a bit further. Councillor Heeman?
Yeah, thank you. Just to pick up on another point. So just the drainage plan that you have currently, in between the Christie Drive and then the future development ones, our consultants have identified that, it doesn't really slow down the flow. And when we look at low impact development and having greater percolation and entry into the water table, and this is significant because it's a wetland, right? And as Ken pointed out, that area floods. So, and you're putting a road there where it floods, and then you're going to concentrate and increase the velocity of the storm flow. So that you might want to look in. I'm sorry, but that's the thing. But maybe we should look at that a little bit more. And that's something, when we built the Field of Dreams, we had to put a storm pond in because upstream we couldn't send more water off a ball diamond down that creek because there wasn't capacity according to the Upper Thames. So, there's a lot of feedback on this whole subject, and we appreciate you being here, and we appreciate your willingness to participate. And I think that there's lots of opportunity to relook at some of these things. And yeah, I'm going to be quiet now.
Thank you. I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you. And thank you for the follow-up comments. I don't think I want to kind of stand up here and rebuttal back and forth for 15 more minutes or anything on that. But I guess as a bit of a higher level comment, stepping back, like DTL's brand is essentially that they're environmental stewards first and developers second or third, like fourth, maybe even, depending on how you want to look at that. Doug Terry Sr.'s been in business for 70 something years, and that's been their primary objective for their developments. They've started in St. Thomas, they've expanded into other areas as well, but their core business kind of model hasn't deviated from that. I go to meetings there every week, and they've got their company values pasted on the wall of their boardroom, and it starts off with leave your campsite cleaner than it was when you got there. It doesn't start off with profit first and build this many more homes when I want to build 5 instead of 4. It's not that. So I guess for whatever that's worth, we can tour you around. We're happy to take you to Lake Margaret. It's won provincial Canadian-wide awards for some of the environmental work that they did there. We've got 37 recommendations or whatever it is in this EIS. The one that was done for that lake had 98 or 92 or something like that started to be satisfied before my career, but I was involved in finishing off the last handful of them, which included building a inlet wetland to clean all the water before it went into the 14-hectare lake. So for whatever it's worth, be assured that it is environmental first, and again, development second or third down that list. The required studies that need to be done have been done. There's, as I've said before, there are different infrastructure needs to be weighed as well as environmental constraints. There's the significant wetland to the north. That's an avoidable wetland. We don't own it, so we can't build a road through it even if we wanted, but we start off with studying it. Where's the limit of the wetland? Where's the setback? And then you back up from there, and then you draw your lot line. So there's an entire area of land on the north side of the site that you would look at. You would think it's development land, like it's farmed right now, but it's not. It will be dedicated to the municipality for preservation. Same thing with the southeast portion of the land, with the Rath Harris Municipal Drain that goes into Mill Creek. There's the turtle pond, so to speak, there that's in line with the drain. All the environmental, geotechnical, all the setbacks in accordance with the provincial studies, their guidelines. That's all done. That establishes the rear lot line. So believe me, the areas that we can avoid, we are. I've built a portion of one road in a wetland once in my career, and in 17 years. And it was agreed upon to be unavoidable. We were extending a road south from a T intersection to make a cross. So we had to consider efficient running of infrastructure. We had to consider creating safe intersections there instead of offsetting the road over a little bit and having an awkward jog that was going to potentially cause accidents. We aligned the intersection, we built a roundabout there and kind of angled the road out. So it encroached a little bit within the corner of that wetland, but there was appropriate EIS, sub-watershed, the whole list of studies was all done. There was a different area of land that was added that was development land, but that was added to the wetland and it was enhanced. So the appropriate compensation was done. And everybody in this room, except for the people that worked on the job, would not be able to pick it out driving down the street anymore, because it takes time to naturalize, but once it's done, Doug Terry Limited will do it right, and it'll be the right solution. So yes, we could avoid extending Christie Drive to the west, avoid the wetland, but then we create even bigger traffic concerns than what we already have right now. And it's kind of the lesser of two evils, I guess, so to speak, that way. The environmental report discusses the mitigation measures that we can do. Upper Thames, we've been working, the Aaron staff report said the first consultation meeting was in 2021, but I think it was in 2017, actually. So we've been working quite closely with staff and the UTRCA and other agencies for the better part of a decade now. And we did not want to submit until we thought we were at a decent point with their, at least staff's kind of quasi endorsements anyway. And we are at a point now with Upper Thames on the resubmission where their letter concludes that they actually, it opens with that the UTRCA has no objections to the proposed applications, essentially, and that you can work out the details through appropriate draft conditions. So although it does seem like looking at the lots is kind of the be all and end all approval, like it's not. Like, in a way, this is the beginning. Like, DTL can't design an apartment building on the high density block without principle of use. Like, you'd run your business into the ground in a week doing that. Like, you have to do things in some sort of an order. And we've got Upper Thames's, again, their no objection letter to the point, and then they have a list of, I think it's 6 recommended draft conditions that that will be, they're registered on title, they're enforced, and they're things that we have to do, which includes getting a Section 28 permit through them prior to doing any work within the wetland. So
Thank you for that insight and background. Tom, do you have anything you'd like to add? And then we'll move on to a few other questions I'm sure the remaining members of council have.
Yeah, I guess just to say that, again, I know it's a lot of work to build houses, to build homes for people, and I respect that. And saying what I say, I want you to also respect that this community knows what it has, and we don't want to lose aspects of what we have as we grow. Growing is inevitable. And yes, I'm familiar with the Upper Thames. I'm on the board of the Upper Thames. I don't think the Upper Thames would have had the same opinion on wetlands until the province changed it and required there to be compensation calculations being made. So I think they also govern within the limitations of the province. And the province also removed natural heritage from Upper Thames. So we are the adjudicating body on natural heritage now, thanks to the province. So you can understand our challenge to understand these things. And that's why we employ third parties who have the credentials, just like you guys do. And if they tell us that, there's outstanding concerns, we can't knowingly move forward having known that, like that it's good to know that there is a path. I find the path alarming, but it's, we need to have, we need to make sure that we are in compliance with our policies under natural heritage and under policies of of the county. So that's where a lot of this is coming from. And again, it's something a lot of us are passionate about in the room. And I appreciate that you're a values-driven company. That's amazing. And I don't think you'd be up here still taking all this from all of us if you weren't. So I would just challenge you, if you feel that you are limited by the current framework and having to put something somewhere that you would think goes against your company values and that you're bending over backwards to try and make it work, come to the table and let's figure something out that, let's think outside the box. So thank you.
Councillor Lockie, would you like to go ahead with any remaining questions that you have?
Sure. Yeah. Now, I really think that really the four key issues here are traffic, we've discussed, environment, we've discussed, and the other two would be density and serving. So I'm going to move this conversation on to the density side. A commitment to informed decisions for community growth while maintaining a cherished hometown feel. So that is the first pillar in our strategic plan. I echo the concerns of the speakers tonight that the 85% high density is not really consistent with this pillar. And like, this is Dorchester, this isn't London Chester. So I have a lot of concerns with that. With respect to the apartment having 100 units per hectare when the plan is, when our official plan is only 35 units per hectare, like that's not even a close comparison. So I have a lot of concerns about bringing that much density into, this little community. So I'm hoping that the developer will, take that into consideration and hopefully, change the percentage and have not quite so much percentage being high density.
So before a possible response, I just want to add on to Councillor Lockie's comments regarding units per hectare. Also within our official plan is that the height restriction is 3 levels or 3 stories. And currently the proposal is for 6 stories. In my research ahead of this meeting, I just wanted to bring forward one of your newer developments by Doug Terry Homes, 300 Manor in St. Thomas. This development is 60 units. It is downtown St. Thomas and it is 4 stories. A comparable unit in Dorchester here was which got special exemption to the OP is Dorchester Terrace. Dorchester Terrace is 4 stories and it's 94 units. I don't exactly know the hectares, so I don't know what the per unit is on that. But in the advertising for 300 Manor and in regards to density is the walkability factor and the neighborhood compatibility for a number of residents in that area that will have the amenities to support that density. We've talked about the lack of public transportation here in Thames Center. We also don't have adequate amenities that are ready to grow with the proposal of the population boom of this subdivision. There was mention earlier in the meeting regarding school capacities. We already have portables at all of our schools except for Northdale, I believe. Although our high school is has lower numbers, it's because we don't have the specialized programs. It's not because we don't have the elementary students to feed into it. Also with that, we don't have a lot of commercialization happening in the community. We just recently opened a second grocery store. And again, to reiterate, none of this is truly within walking distance of the new proposal. So everyone in these areas will have to drive. I mentioned earlier when we were talking about traffic is that there's big concerns regarding parking and not just parking of the residents that are coming in, but the residents in from surrounding neighborhoods such as London or other areas around the county that come and enjoy the Mill Pond, come into the Frozen Cow, or utilize the recreation facility just down the road. So I'm just very hesitant regarding the scale and fit of the higher density proposal and how this looks when there are, I would say, better suited options that conform to our existing OP and that you yourselves are already building in other areas. So I just wanted to bring that forward. Lastly, the absence of clearly defined phasing strategy just really irks me in regards to setting ourselves up to become a bedroom community. And we have so much potential along the 401 corridor to grow in other aspects, which is decisions made outside of your realm. But I just don't want to back ourselves into a corner that we can't get out of. Employment lands are just as important as residences, and the consideration before us on council is imperative as we make our decisions going forward. So with that, I'd like to pass it over. Danielle, do you have anything to add?
Yeah. So the other thing that I think we still need to address would be the servicing. And so I guess there was, it was said that, they're open to, alignment 2, but they're still working out some of the details. Is there anything that is preventing us from adopting that alignment for the servicing? Because it would seem like that will help with the dewatering and the impact. Oh, I can't see you guys back there. Sorry. Go ahead, Jared.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor. There's 2 options there. We're still considering the 2 alternatives and weighing out all the different categories, I guess, on each one of them. That's not completed yet.
Thanks.
Jeff, did you have anything to add?
You're going to coax me. Yeah, I think we're looking at, we're doing it through a subdivision approval process, and it's just like doing it through an environmental assessment. You're looking at economic economic costs. You're looking at environmental. You maybe turn off your mic. You're looking at environmental, economic, and social factors, and the process then leads to the choice of the best. From our perspective, we do, we're kind of leaning, it looks like route number 2 is going to be the best route, but I don't want to presuppose that. I think what everyone said makes great sense, and it has economic impact and also social impact, and it kind of makes it a favorable route, but we want to go through the process and look at it thoroughly.
Are you good back there? Okay. Over to you if you have any response.
Just quickly on the sewer alignment, agree completely with what Jeff and Jared said. When working the master servicing plan that's currently in the process of being updated, has identified these 2 alignments right from the get-go, and so we're still working in conformance with all those policies and quite closely with staff. That's kind of one of the main topics that we're active on right now, is to try to nail that down. So the concerns are heard on that for sure. With respect to the density, that was touched on a little bit earlier in Alex and Tracy's rebuttal, but like density, the numbers on the paper are one thing, but there's ways to craft subdivisions, so to speak, to lay them out so that density can be overbearing and in your face, or there's ways to lay it out that you can do it right. And as I said, we've been working on this for the better part of the decade. I think we've looked at every option under the sun, although maybe there is one more, but we've certainly kicked it around a lot internally and with staff. And a bunch of those changes have had to do with the high density block. But when you look at the percentages, and I think that 85 perhaps doesn't include some of the units in the future development block that aren't lotted out right now. So it's a little bit skewed because the density block is in the first phase, but not the future phase. But kind of like that aside, if you think about it as land area, which Alex did touch on, the area of the high density on the overall site is about 9% of the land area. So if you drive up the street, it's not going to be apartment building, apartment building, apartment building, then a house. There's just one site that will have, again, to be determined, but maybe a handful or something of low-rise apartment buildings within it. It's been purposely kind of concentrated in its own area. It's purposely not been put in the backyards of some of the existing residents to try to buffer that a little bit, as some of the planning justification reports do speak to. The block purposely was given a little bit of a narrower frontage on Christie, and it's a little bit deeper. So that will be the main thoroughfare through the subdivision. So it's basically about 100 meters of frontage or thereabouts along Christie on the one side of the road. That will be kind of your only real visibility to the high density area of the site. The site is predominantly singles of varying sizes, and there is a gentle mix of semis and townhomes in there. The site has actually an over dedication of parkland. The trail construction is essentially dedicating the land as mandatory, but constructing the trails is kind of a voluntary measure that DTL is committed to, kind of right from the start. One of the first things on this concept plan, actually, I think it was the first thing on this plan that we started with, was consideration to maintaining the Harry Small Trail. There wasn't, at the time anyway, anything that kind of forced a dedicated trail block, but DTL voluntarily is providing a 20-meter wide right-of-way just for establishment of that trail that will have that drainage corridor next to it, but has space for a few rows of trees and all the naturalization plants and everything that's proposed along that channel. So kind of for a bit of a frame of reference, like a regular trail block width, kind of they do vary, but the minimum would be 3 meters. Sometimes it's a 3-meter trail within a 5-meter block or something like that. This is a 3-meter trail within a 20-meter block. So DTL has certainly kind of went considerably above and beyond to provide a corridor for that trail to be constructed in that will have space for proper tree canopy cover to establish, and native grasses and all that type of stuff. We did consider making the Christie Drive right away wider and just building the trail within that, but then that raised safety concerns with rollerbladers and kids on the trail and whatever, and cars backing out of their driveways. So we've purposely provided this as a dedicated corridor. It does have to intersect 2 streets, but it's unavoidable. 2 streets instead of 100 driveways was kind of the lesser of 2 evils there. So I do think that we've given that trail really the best consideration that we can, and giving it a chance of success. And then in addition to that, have provided a main north-south trail through the site as well that will provide quite good linkage when it's all said and done.
I believe our planner, Aaron, has a comment.
Just quickly, sorry. And kind of going back just to the density topic that we were discussing. With the high density block, just for council's information as well, they still have restrictions on the site per the lot provisions. There's still lot coverage restrictions. There's parking considerations that will take up a considerable portion of the property. So there are things that will limit the development. It's not going to be 100% of this block that is being built out. Certainly there are other lot provision considerations in that regard. Thank you.
Councillor Heeman.
Thank you. I just want to kind of riff on some of the things that have been said. Yeah, we don't have a lot of commercial property or zoning or commercial buildings. That's something in the Economic Development Committee we've identified as a limit to small businesses being, starting in Thames Center. And that's where if you do have multi-story, if you can have first level commercial, and I think that, that's generally desirable. Again, that would be an amenity for the neighborhood and contribute to walkability. And just as on a more general note, the more we can have mixed development instead of, a really big one here and then a lot of smaller semi-detached, detached lots, that's better than having the range. And I never thought I'd say it, but Hawthorne is probably a good example of that phase transition where you have conformity with the existing neighborhood and then gradually transitioning to density, but the density in relation to an arterial road. Right. So and that, I'll tell you, the mayor got elected opposing that. Right. And that was a good compromise for this community. Maybe some people are still upset, but that is the high water mark right now. And we only allowed 4 stories because they were going to put in seniors housing, and they did do that. So that was a consideration. Again, that's a partnership between the municipality and the developer and meeting in the middle. So that just as a positive example there. One other element of mixed use is part of it is having the right flow in the neighborhoods. Again, I'm just going to go out on a limb here because I know some of the folks in Tyner. I think, if you were, again, focus the traffic, have more cul-de-sacs adjacent to the area that you have on the existing Christie, develop an east-west corridor that intersects Boardwalk 2 over to Mill Road and your existing lot to the south. Then you could have your double outlets that are going to reduce the traffic impact, right? You're going to bypass the existing community, right? And you're going to leave that neighborhood intact, right? And then you're also going to have smaller neighborhoods yourself. So you're not going to have that same volume of traffic in your proposed development. So that's just some, so you could create an artery, that would allow you to do a lot of the things you want. And again, having, one big 6-story, if you could have a couple smaller 4 stories and have them, more spread out instead of one concentrated area. But that's assuming you have a nice arterial outlet, right? That's still a provision in our official plan, is to have, access to an arterial outlet. So just some thoughts, but I really think if, it is important to have those different outlets. If, the owner of Boardwalk subdivision was here today, and I think, again, this is thinking outside the box, collaborating, and we can create those win-wins. And having the phases, we don't know what you're going to do with the land that is future development. So how can we figure out our water and wastewater capacity if we don't have the total, calculation, right? I know you may have it, we don't. So how are, and all the people in the room, they're paying the bills for that water and wastewater because of how the province structures it, right? So if we need, again, our peer review identified, with the current numbers, there may be capacity restrictions with our processing capacity, with our pumping stations. We need to know all of the bigger you can make the plan and the longer term, then we can approve it in phases. It's easier to understand, and we can make sure we're ready for you when that time comes.
So at this time, I think that council has asked all of their questions that they have. I'm not sure if Councillor Lockie, if you have any final comments.
Yeah, I just want to, thank the developer for being here and for staff and for everybody that's come out tonight, and especially those who have spoken, especially Mark and Laura, Ken. Your feedback has helped us to make better decisions, and yeah, and it's so important to make the right decisions for this community. So thank you so much, and thank you for sticking out for 3+ hours.
I'm going to put on my counselor hat for a second and just say thank you as well. As Thames Center continues to grow, I think it's increasingly important that individual developments be evaluated not in isolation, but as a holistic approach for the betterment of our community. Just to reiterate some of the highlights from this evening, I think in mitigating environmental servicing and traffic concerns would be top priority. Medium and high density design refinement and potential phasing for integration and mitigating impact of our existing residents. I do want to just say thank you again. The ability to continue this conversation to not only add new and diverse housing, but to contribute positively to our long-term strength and character and the sustainability of Thames Center is very important. At this time, can I continue? I feel weird that I'm... Okay. I was going to say, does Doug Terry, do you have any final comments? And then I will move on to the conclusion of this meeting. Councillor Heeman.
Thank you. Just one last comment. Sometimes you're the hardest on the people you love, you know? And a lot of people have a lot of strong feelings about this property, and we have great expectations for you joining the community. So again, thank you for being here tonight.
So putting back on the chair hat, council would like to thank you for your comments and being respectful during this process. When the final report is presented, our role will be to make a decision and recommendations to the county that aligns with the Provincial Planning Act, Provincial Planning Statement, and the Municipal Official Plan. Ultimately, the final approval of the official plan and plan of subdivision will rest with Middlesex County. Do I have to close this out? Okay. With that, we will move on to the confirmatory bylaw. That bylaw 232026 be the confirmatory bylaw be read a first, second, and third and final time and be adopted. If I can have a mover. Councillor Lockie and seconded by Councillor Heeman. Carried. All in favor. Do I get to vote? Okay. Just for regular process, our next regular meeting of council will be Monday, March 9th, 2026 at 5 p.m. in Chambers. And following that will be Monday, March 23rd, 2026 at 5 p.m. in council chambers. With that, I need a mover and a seconder to adjourn tonight's special meeting at 7:44. Councillor Heeman, Councillor Lockie, all in favor. Thank you again, everyone.